several distinctions with Yopon holly, and one really interesting one. Yopon holly contains the highest concentration of caffeine in the leaves and the fruit of any native plant in the eastern United States. And use was made of this, I remember as long ago as I can remember, I used to hear in the old southern plantations, you'd hear about mint julep, but you'd also hear about Yopon tea, and or black tea it was called. And this was actually consumed by the aristocracy and so forth, but I think the thing behind the Yopon tea was that it was not just an ordinary tea. You got a buzz from the caffeine, fairly high caffeine content. So it lived on as a southern drink. I say southern drink because it's a coastal species, and again with DNA assayed some debris that was found in sediment in the bottom of pottery of Native American origin, and it didn't really say how many thousand years, but it had to be several. And this is Illinois, and guess what turned up? Yopon, far out of the range of Yopon, but as I understand it, Indian trade routes went a long way, and some things even crossed the Mississippi native range. Cleanse or purge the body, and they would just drink great quantities of it. And this is what I have read was in the range, the southern range of Yopon, like from southern Virginia around to East Texas. But they would drink great quantities and purge themselves of whatever, I don't know. But and that gave rise to the specific epithet here with the botanical name Alex. That's the family of holly, or it's the genus of holly. And then vomitoria was a purge that was used with Native Americans, and it persisted for years. So I guess it was, they thought it was helpful. All right, here's one that, well, they're all interesting to me, but this one's got a little history behind it, even more history, and it's what we call Jerusalem oak or Mexican tea. This is a plant that's in its own family, Chenopodiaceae, but it was used as what's called a vermifuge or an anthelmintic, and that was it would rid the body of tape and hookworms, and back when you had a lot more prevalence of tapeworms and hookworms and this kind of intestinal parasites. And it was not only used as drenches for animals, the mixture of it, but it was used in children too, because I know some older people that as youngsters they were given it for these worms, so-called worm treatments, and it would actually purge humans of these parasites. But they call it Mexican tea because it was used as a tea, but it was around here. It had come up from Mexico, like sort of like the boll weevil, and now is in almost, I guess, all the continental 48 states. But some of the older folks now, some are still living, that actually as children and as older women that couldn't do much else, they would actually gather these Jerusalem oak seeds, and they were real minute seed, and they would sell them to intermediaries, and the seed were then in turn processed in factories, and they made besides the drenches, they made I think this black draft was a purgative that was actually made from these so-called Jerusalem oak seeds. Just one little aside, this is in the same family with beets and with spinach, Chenopodiaceae. And then on to one called the spice bush. And this plant is usually thought of as being a mountainous plant, and it's in the mountains in Piedmont, but what you don't read is that it can be in the coastal plain. It had never been found in Deepland County, and a couple of years ago I found it about a mile from where I lived on a little creek. And it's around, but what good is it? Well, here's what good it is. It's in the laurel family, or spice bush family, and all of these members and the fruit and the crushed leaves have just a really nice lemon-like odor. And the odor of the old world plant called benzoin, which is very aromatic, and it made our colonials and later on made a spicy drink, a spicy beverage out of this so-called spice bush. Okay. Here's one that's interesting, and as far as I know, it does not really have any pharmacologic use, although other members of the family do. But anyway, this is so-called silky camellia, and I've been fortunate enough this past summer I found it in 2 new counties. I found it in Clifton and Hughes